Shanti. As I sit here, I reflect on how quickly and easily one can develop attachments. The chair in which I am sitting, or the space of floor, I might already think of as my seat, my space. The clothes on the body, my clothes. This experience of mine can emerge so quickly, so easily. But it might just be an illusion. Everything around me that my physical senses or science can detect is temporary, temporal, comes and goes with the passage of time. In my company for only a short period. So can any of the physical realm, the chair in which I sit, the clothes on the body, can any of that ever really be mine? Rather than learning how to attach, I need to learn how to let go, align with the truth. The physical is temporary, but the non-physical, the spiritual, is enduring. What will give me greatest security, safety, comfort is to realize and experience that I am not temporary. I, the spiritual being, because I am not physical, I am not temporary. I do not die. Everything around me, even this body, is temporary. It will all come and go, but it's simply the beginning and end of relationships. Only becoming a bondage when I succumb to the illusion of mind. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti, good evening, and welcome to Interview with the Raj Yogi. Tonight's session is Freedom and Immortality. And so, for those in the regular students, there was an aspect in today's morning class about soul consciousness, such a important practice in the heart of the study of Raja Yoga and its relationship with what is freedom and what is immortality. And I hope you don't feel we're jumping ahead, but this topic of immortality sometimes comes up. You see it in movies. I've seen it in conversations. I think we were joking with a coworker saying, and what if you were immortal? And they're like, I don't want to be immortal. I'll be old and everything will, pass by and, everything will fall apart. So we have a very physical idea of immortality. And so, in terms of this topic, in terms of it being relevant to souls, was really actually what the intention of this topic is. Perhaps, Sister G, if you can share about what is immortal in the lens of Raja Yoga.
Om Shanti. Yes, definitely. We would see this idea of eternal or immortal in lots of futuristic kind of dramas, and you could see that it's a struggle when it's understood physically. I know I would always wonder how that's going to work. At what age do you stop aging? Are you immortally a child? Is everyone like, how does it work? So it was confusing. Um, and I think, again, it's a case of clearly articulating what we're trying to do. So if we look, many souls have this fear, the biggest one, of dying. And then there's little deaths in our lives, changes all the time. Children might leave the home, or loss of job, or whatever the case. So this seems to cause us great concern. And when someone's also experiencing sorrow or regret from some event in the past, and intuitively they know I need to let go, but they don't know how. So trying to articulate always exactly, is it that we want to be physically immortal, which has some serious issues to it, or do we just want to feel like everything is okay? Because then we might have to let go of this model of physical immortality and see what model could give us the feeling that I'm going to be okay. No matter what happens, I'm going to be okay. And what we realize is the cause of sorrow, distress, is attachment, an inability to let go. So immortality is very connected to the spiritual capacity of letting go, because everything around us is temporary. We have to master the art of letting go. And what makes it easy is to realize I am not temporary, because I am not physical. So once I'm able to have that spiritual experience that I, the soul, am eternal, then I'm able to start to let go. I'm able to have a different relationship with physicality. Immortality is not just realizing I am eternal. It's also realizing my relationship with the physical. In other words, having this power to let go. That makes me immortal. I do not succumb to mortality or physicality. I don't die. So it begins with being open to spirituality, and really articulating clearly, what is it that I want? Is it to be physically more? I don't think so. But is it to feel I'm okay? I get through everything. Everything's okay. Yes, definitely want that.
One of the things that came up in terms of this topic may not seem directly related, but is quite common. You hear of it in psychology, you hear of it in nursing, is grief theory, is loss. And I recall learning that it's not just loss of people, it's loss of things. And so could you share more about, in terms of implications on the day-to-day life when you're saying, I'm okay, because it seems like we're constantly grieving. There's always loss. And that's really disheartening for souls that they just feel this is the way things should be.
Yeah, it could be as simple. I get to see it, when someone comes into a fitness class and someone's standing in their spot, which isn't really their spot, the loss of their spot in the room can cause grief. So, not to make it trivial, but we are confronting it every day. We have a desire, expectation that we're attached to of even how we'd like things to go on or what's going to happen with my relationships, possessions, people, and body. And may not necessarily go that way. So it can definitely be, if we watch ourselves during the day with some objectivity, over and over, we can see the cause of distress, sorrow, is this attachment that I want things to go a certain way. And so, if I can again master the art of detaching, and when we say detaching, it's not from everything, I'm not going into complete nothingness, detaching from the temporal. So, I'm attaching to what is eternal, which turns out to be attaching to what is most valuable. This allows me to naturally start to be more at ease, more easy with letting go of what is temporal, which it's an illusion to think the temporal could ever be eternal.
I find it so interesting you mentioned about this aspect of detaching, and I don't want it to suddenly become a topic about that. And still, we keep to this aspect, this topic of freedom and immortality. But perhaps, as you were saying, it's so easy to look at a very physical lens when it comes to immortality. Because one of the things, and I think it's a part of your sharing, is like, well, if I live forever and everyone else passes away, isn't that a very lonely experience? But in terms of detachment to, I guess, any kind of spiritual word, we kind of take in a very physical way, as you mentioned about. And so, in terms of this, what is the it's easy to try, okay, let me look up a dictionary and what detachment means, or let me ask someone who's seasoned, experienced in the study. But on a deep level, we still haven't changed that experience. And the same thing with maybe ideas of immortality, for example. Do you feel that it's that we may also have an idea that, just tell me that I'm a soul and that's it? Or is it this lived experience of what it means to be a soul that we might not really realize how important that is?
What do you think? So,
But we don't behave that way.
so maybe we haven't. I was speaking with someone. It was so lovely what they're sharing. I love it when souls are open. It's not that you necessarily need to immediately feel it, but just to be open to the idea. And the soul was open. And they're very honest. So it's a really lovely conversation. And we're talking about this idea of two rooms, what we call the body conscious room, or the room that's based on temporary physicality, sometimes illusion, and then the soul conscious room based on spirituality. And quite frankly, all these words, freedom, immortality, detachment, they're all connected to the word truth. So this idea of what is true, eternal. And what can often happen is that I'm in this body conscious room, which has become so familiar to me, trying to theoretically imagine what's going on in the other room. I haven't actually gone into it, and I'm deceived into thinking I'm in there, even though I'm just theorizing in this room. Because the door between the two, it's very easy to pass through, but it's absolutely terrifying for most souls. So fear can actually stop me from truly going through. But there's even illusion to myself. I've deceived myself that I have, because I can talk about it so well. I theorize so well. So what the soul was sharing, they were totally getting it. And they said something so sweet. They said, so are there windows on that soul conscious room? And I said, sure. So I can look in. And that's the idea of being open. At least I'm looking in and being attracted to it. I said, yeah, that's a great first step. But to be aware, that's what I'm doing. I'm just looking in. I'm not in there yet. It's just, and can people in there look out? I said, of course. If you can look in, they can look out. In fact, that's what they do. They look out, they radiate those benefits with the hope that it might encourage others to overcome their fear. But the main thing to know is that fear, letting go, is terrifying to us. So that fear can block me from actually going to the room, but I'm left maybe deceived that I have gone in there because I can speak about it so well.
A part of this topic was actually from for the regular students in morning class. If it was not the day before, the day or a couple of days before that, about freedom when it's so trying to assess it in meditation, if we want to call it meditation, having the experience of being a soul, this struggle that some souls have about falling asleep or they're checking out, and being able to assess the difference between, is that freedom that I'm experiencing, and how do I, like, what do I do if I'm struggling with falling asleep, zoning out, maybe struggling with even keeping my eyes open.
I like to have a piece of me watching me while I'm doing these activities. There's lots of pieces, directions we could go with that question, but one that's coming to mind is the idea of realizing, to have a realization. We're trying to realize the self, that it becomes real. And the word eyes, the sound of that word is in the word realize. And I've noticed that when I have a realization, I can be saying to myself, yes, I'm a soul, I'm a soul. But to realize, oh my gosh, I'm a soul, like I actually get it, I feel it. The moment I do, it's really interesting. My physical eyes like really become open. Like I'm really engaged. So realization is an activity of something called the intellect, that part of us that truly experiences or remembers, gets it. And we want to engage our intellect. And that's where things become tricky because I can be thinking something, and that's the activity of the mind, and feel, because we're so clever with the thoughts, that something's going on, but I'm not actually realizing. So one of the signs, perhaps, that things have gone into the intellect is I am wide awake. Wide awake. I don't go into this kind of passive, zoned out, blissed out. I'm like, there's an energy or feeling to it. I need to know myself well and watch myself to know the contrast between passive and active. But learning how to engage my intellect and operate with my intellect, it's all a lot of training and learning. I should not assume anything. Coming into spiritual study, like all skills have become rusty, and I really need to start from the basics and constantly revise.
You had shared one time, you were listening to, it might have been some senior brothers sharing about a very systematic way of going into such a concentrated experience, and of course this is the concentrated experience of me as being an immortal being, a soul, and that does seem like freedom. But what is it that, if you recall, they had shared? Because that's where souls are trying. Either they seem to go into chattering inside and staying awake, or they're trying to have a concentrated experience and then they fall asleep. And it seems like it's a challenge. Perhaps maybe again it's just previous births, these old habits. And do you recall what they shared, and in terms of what you have refined in your practice as well to be able to stay on track, as it's easy for some of the old ideas, old habits to come up again?
So, first of all, keeping it very simple, to recognize that there's a lot of resistance or opposition to what we're trying to do. Um, so that is going to happen, whether you want to call it old habits or the ego, whatever, it will be pulling. But I remember the idea of, yes, I'm a soul, but then almost an investigative report of the self without going into too much thought. Very simple. But what type of soul? So almost giving myself the lesson on soul consciousness as I train my intellect to work. Obviously, this will refine as I go along, and allowing not just the pat answer to come. This isn't a memorization activity, but allowing the answer to bubble up. So there's some realization or insight into what type of soul. But there's a deep habit. It's very natural for us to be body conscious, so we keep dropping out. So I really have to train this kind of muscle of soul consciousness. And I like what was shared earlier, that thinking can actually, the energy of thinking can pull us out. So that makes it tricky, very tricky. I know I'm going in the right direction when I'm fully awake, but there's less thought. Sometimes there's so many thoughts and there's journaling and all sorts of stuff going on. I'm not going in the right direction. I know it feels like something's going on, but this sort of again, this silence where I'm fully awake, fully absorbed in the experience, not a lot of thinking going on. So I'm using the cooperation of the mind to kind of get there. But if I arrive there, there isn't a lot of thoughts, but I'm fully engaged. I'm not asleep. So I kind of have to check all of this, and the odds are I've done it right if I'm able to stabilize there for a while and not drop out.
So does it mean that I'm not thinking at all, or just that it's just because I can see where souls go? Does it mean I become like thoughtless? I know Mom had shared about. I wish I found that class about what thoughtless means. She was, as you were saying, it's tricky, like because it can go in different directions. I have no thoughts at all, or I'm still aware, and I guess it's something we just have to explore.
It's tricky, but it's not tricky. We actually are meditators and yogis all the time, in the sense that we are always having yoga or remembering something. And we have no problem concentrating or becoming absorbed in a single focus, thinking the same thing. It might be an incident from the past. We think it over and over. We have no problem with these. The problem is they're focused on the wrong aim. So it's not that my mind is empty. We have the term man above. It is absorbed. My mind and intellect are fully engaged in one single experience. Everything else, for all intents and purposes, has disappeared. There's nowhere else for my mind or intellect to go. I'm so in reality. So it's not that everything's empty. It's fully absorbed in reality. Again, we have these skills. We're just applying them in the wrong places.
Last question, when you're saying the mind is absorbed, the experience is absorbed. So, meaning I'm in that experience that I'm free from all this other stuff, this freedom, this experience of immortality.
Yes, that word detachment again is so natural you wouldn't even use it. Today the example was given about disinterest, another misunderstood concept. They're very connected. That again, when I am so fulfilled, spiritually fulfilled by what I'm focusing on, and the example given was God, being a child of God, and what naturally is mine, what naturally I can experience. When I'm really absorbed in that, I taste that and it tastes so good. I'm not really interested in anything else. It's so natural. You don't have to fight against the attachments or fight against the attraction. It's really natural. So it's a replacement system. Thinking I'm emptying my mind is a big mistake. It will never work. Be a lot of laboring. I am not emptying my mind and intellect. I am filling them up with something very, very different.
Thank you, Sister Judy. There's definitely some aspects if hopefully we are experimenting with to increase this accuracy, meaningfulness. So we'll have a little reflection.
When I sit with myself inside, giving myself my full attention, what we call solitude, I can ask myself, what do you need? What do you hunger for? Very honest conversation with myself. And if I go very deep in that conversation, the response is often the same for all of us. Love, to feel valued, to feel comfort, peace, even forgiveness, to feel light, no heaviness, to feel that everything's okay. These things I hunger for, they're not physical, although I try to find them in the physical world with only temporary results. These hungers inside are non-physical or spiritual in nature. So I start to orient towards spirituality, what is eternal, what is true, what is authentic, and even elevated and divine. And it's possible my journey, my seeking might even bring me to God, the source of all that feeds the soul. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti. Thank you for joining with us this evening. So we want to remind souls that the next Learn About Meditation is being offered at the Academy this Saturday. So 12:30 to 12:15 to 1:30 p.m. Can't seem to remember that for some reason. So you're welcome to drop in. If you forget to register, you just need to check in at the front desk just to let them know. That'd be much appreciated. The details are on the Calgary Center's website, calgary.brahmakumaris.ca. And also into May, we'll be looking at the English Raja Yoga Foundations, again, offered on Fridays now instead of Wednesdays. So it's 6:30 to 8 o'clock p.m. and registration is required for that. So again, you can find that on the center's website. And finally, we have been putting out all the details on the national website as well as the Calgary website in terms of Sister Shivani's Canadian tour. So she will be in Calgary on Friday, August 22nd. And the venue is also showed on there, the Grey Eagle Events venue or event center. So if you are interested, there is a registration link. And we will keep reminding souls the registration link is not to get tickets because it's going to take quite a bit of time to be able to have the ticket situation organized. But it's also for souls to actually have an inner preparation or experience of this theme of inner freedom. And specifically, there are different themes connected to that with all the other centers. So if you have questions about that, please send an email to the center. But if you're interested in knowing more about it, stay updated and be a part of that spiritual preparation, please visit the website. And of course, all of our drop-in sessions that are available, you can find all the information at the Calgary website. Anything I missed? All right. Thank you for joining with us. Om Shanti.